Hey, Pete.
Oh, hi, Doug. Good evening. You're muted.
Sorry, let's call the meeting to order.
Okay.
6 o'clock.
So, good evening, everybody. So, just wanted to give you a quick status report on attendance. Emily has her hands full, so I'm not sure if she'll be able to attend or be present for the whole meeting. And it's really up to y'all. Our current membership is at, let's see, we're Doug, Emily, Sam, and Dave Trotter. So that's 4 standing members, and a quorum is 3. And it's up to you guys if you want to go through the discussion items this evening, or there's been a lot of discussion about holding a separate interview for a prospective member. And I also learned that Brian Kvisla is planning to reapply today as well. So tentatively, we could hold a separate Zoom meeting to interview both Brian and Shannon Ehleringer. But we need to coordinate with the mayor on that so she could sit in as well. But if that sounds amenable to you all, potentially we could have a better discussion with 6 members for the items that we wanted to get through tonight. So the discussion items that are on the under the discussion heading, include the tree recommendation letter to the city commission, which is not attached to the agenda. How that jives with city commission goal 7, strategy 7.1 with respect to tree canopy, and looking at the NRC work plan, which are all pretty important items. And in particular, the letter, I think it would be good to put a draft out on the agenda so that the public can see it before we actually discuss it. So having said that, I'll leave the decision up to you guys whether you want to table the discussion items, and we can just, okay, and then we'll decide. We can have a meet and greet.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'm fully present at the moment, and I'll update if that changes. But yeah, expecting good things because the little one is currently training the dog, so that usually takes a while.
Okay. All right. How do the others feel?
Well, I have not. I'm just going to say I don't think I have seen some of these people before. Of course, they did interview me, but I'm Doug Neely. This is my first meeting. I spaced off last month. I'm sorry about that. There's no good excuse, but I'll do a better job from here on out.
And I am more than happy to go through the discussion items this evening, and we can, always revisit them if at a later meeting. So, should we move ahead?
Sure, let's move ahead, and we'll see how far we get.
Okay. All right. Well, I had heard a rumor that Jerry Herman might join us. I sent him the link, but I haven't seen him come online yet, but he might. So if you see a Rivers of Life screen pop up, that's probably Jerry. So let's get to introductions. And I'd like to introduce Thomas Kissinger and kick it off, and then we can go round robin and talk about how we all fit in here. How's that sound?
Sounds good to me.
Great.
Yeah, so I'm Thomas Kissinger. I'm the new Parks and Cemetery Manager for Oregon City Parks and Recreation, and excited to be here today and kind of learn a little bit about what the NRC does and how we can maybe coordinate a little more on the park side, since we both kind of have similar goals of protecting natural resources in Oregon City. So excited to be here. Thanks.
Where did you come from, Tom?
So I came from Marion County, where I was for about 5 years as the Parks Program Supervisor. My big project down there was fire restoration. I was the program supervisor during the 2020 wildfires when we had six of our parks just completely destroyed. So led the restoration of 156 acres of parkland and 220 acres of county right-of-way up in the kind of the Opal Creek Wilderness area in conjunction with Forest Service and BLM and all the different partners in that area. So restoration and the natural environment is near and dear to my heart. I have a background in scouting, so came up through scouting, became an Eagle Scout, worked at a scout camp as the Nature and Ecology Conservation Director for a while. So I really love kind of like the natural resources element of parks and what it can provide. Green spaces in short supply in a lot of the country, and parks are one of the few areas that people have to access them. And I'm really passionate about public land. I kind of grew up in parks, everything from state parks to national parks to my local ball field. And I'm very passionate about making sure that people have access to that space for the future. And that's why I do what I do.
I have a question for you, Thomas. What is your sphere of influence with the city and parks? So what is your responsibilities in terms of where we could ask you for, partnership or working on projects?
Yeah, so my group is really in charge of kind of the overall maintenance and construction of parks and amenities. We're still kind of fleshing out what my role is because when I worked at the county, I did everything. So everything from policy to construction to, recreation programming, event programming, a little bit of everything. So I've got a background in kind of all the major facets of parks and recreation. And in this role, it's definitely more focused on the park land itself. So a lot of that is like tree permits, when there's hazard tree removals, tree management, plant management, restoration, turf management for sports fields and things like that. We've got our crew is primarily responsible for a lot of kind of the boots on the ground work of maintaining those parks. And then, future developments and construction of new amenities. I've done a lot of grant writing in my past. Particularly with natural resources, getting some different Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board grants for the county for the restoration. So I can see a lot of that kind of being my purview in this role. And I see a lot of potential crossover with this group as well. Some areas that I've already, just in kind of my month on the job of site tours, some areas that I've seen that I think could use a little extra love and, potentially some areas where we could build some new things and have new habitat. One of the things I noticed, and this is just my own little personal thing, one of the things I noticed on my initial tour is there's a lot of grass out there, and grass is tough to maintain over time. There's definitely some areas where we can fill that out with some other vegetation that's also beneficial for habitat. So, and less maintenance burden.
You got your hand up.
Well, I was glad to hear that from him because that's probably my number one interest too.
Yep.
I've seen a lot of grass out there as well.
Yep.
Have you met Tom Gaskell with the Great Oregon City Watershed Council?
I haven't yet. He's on my list to meet, but I'm very familiar with working with the watershed councils. I worked very closely with the Pudding River Watershed Council and the North Sandium Watershed Council. I actually just got an application today to be on their board. So
yeah, I'm a founding member of that Watershed Council. I've been on the Natural Resource Committee for two-year terms before, but this is my first time. I've been on it for some time.
Yep. Yeah, he's on my list of important people to meet with. Really kind of want to see how we can, mesh and some different projects. I really learned from working with those different groups down in the canyon. We did a bunch of volunteer efforts together. They were supporters on our different grants and we were supporters on their grants. And, good partnership with those groups is really important to me.
Well, we were already partners with you.
Awesome. Yeah.
Doug, do you want to go next and talk about your background?
I am concerned, of course, about our tree canopy in general, and I guess one of my big concerns is with the changing climate, the kinds of trees that we might have to look at may be different. I mean, I noticed we've had Western red cedar dying off in the upland areas. That's gone true, I think, with red alder as well. And so I'm sure that Metro Regional Government is going to be looking at that. The state's going to be looking at that. And so probably at some point, we all should kind of be involved in how we're going to deal with that particular future. So.
Okay.
Emily, do you want to give a brief background about yourself?
Yeah, I just kind of want to piggyback off what Doug said. I was glad to hear Thomas said you see a lot of grass because I think that's something we've been talking about kind of for a long time in the NRC and a little bit in PRAC, but mostly here that we do have a lot of grass and most of it isn't turf grass. Most of it isn't used for sports. It's just kind of the default. So very happy to hear that you also see that. Let's see, my academic background, I was in philosophy and cultural ecology. I spent a lot of time doing field work in the tropics in college and after, mostly with poison dart frogs, but also tree frogs and some salamanders in Central America. Since then, I opened up a plant nursery. I sell tropical plants, mostly from Ecuador and Southeast Asia. I've got an online nursery that's been going for about 4 years now. I have lived in Oregon City 3.5 years. I've got 2 dogs, spend a lot of time in the park, and I live in the Rivercrest neighborhood.
I'll go next. I'm Samantha Wolf. I've been in Oregon City since, well, my home I purchased it in 2016, but I moved to Oregon initially from Michigan in 2013. So I've been here a little over 10 years, and I've been on the NRC for, I guess, 4 or 5 years. And I've been recently, so my brain background is in forest ecology and urban forestry in particular. I have a strong background in climate change in terms of its effect on the landscape, as well as other landscape changes driving from humans, basically. So development and its impacts as well. And what else? I feel like there's more, but I have 2 kids. I have an infant. Part of why I'm so scatterbrained is because I'm sleep deprived. So that's what it is.
Understood. I think everyone's a little sleep deprived this week. I don't know why. It seems to be the norm. My name is Pete Walter. I've been with the Oregon City Planning Division since 2006, doing short range and long range planning. And I've been involved in a lot of the code amendments dealing with either natural resources or trees, or and I work very closely with the other departments that regulate stormwater, like Public Works, et cetera, And I'd love it to have a closer relationship with PRAC and the Parks Department. I think it's really critical because, as you guys know, there are parks are not separate from the natural resources, they're more from the watershed. In most of our cases, in many of the cases, the natural resource overlay district is in or on parks, and that sort of thing. So yeah, my interest is definitely geared more towards, I guess, tree canopy and that sort of thing. But what I do in my daily job is regulate development. So, and that right now is very much focused on housing and policies that promote housing. And there's been a lot of legislation on that. But we're also focusing on the legislation coming out of the state with respect to climate change as well. And I think that could be an entire discussion item when the time is right, is what is happening with the climate friendly and equitable communities legislation coming out of the state. We are on track to complete the local adoption of a lot of that regulation by the end of this year, but we haven't started the work yet. Looking at being the lead on that project, and it'll definitely be something that we want to bring before the NRC. So, but welcome, and it's great to see some new and old members back. So yeah, did we miss anybody? I don't think we did. We skipped over public comment, but we didn't have anybody here to do that. So, Sam, do you want to take us to the next agenda item?
Hey Pete, before you do, I'm just going to
Yeah.
say thank you all. I got to run to a Valentine's Day date, so.
That's right.
Thank you
Understood.
all. It's nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks, Tom. We look forward to working with you.
Yeah,
Thanks for making time.
absolutely. Excited to be here. Bye.
Goodbye. So the first item for discussion this evening was the tree code recommendation to the city commission. And Doug, just so you know, at the last meeting, we had a presentation from Josh Wheeler in Public Works, talking about the sidewalk repair grant program and what the city commission has done with that program, which is still ongoing, and how the liability associated with tree roots lifting sidewalks drives a lot of that policy. But that came out of a discussion from the NRC previously that would, and Sam can probably put this in better than I can, but you know, the focus is so much on liability and sidewalk repair and not so much on preservation of trees. And part of that is because of the way the code is written with respect to what a hazard is, and how the code does not require an arborist report when there's a sidewalk lift. It automatically allows the tree to be removed if there's an Americans with Disabilities Act mobility issue. And that it's a very low threshold to get to that point. You know, it can be a 1/4 inch lift or just buckling even. And regardless of the size of the tree gets to be removed without looking at the root system or the health of the tree, etc. So that was, I'm making a very quick summary of what some of the concerns were from the NRC. And based on that, the direction was the NRC would put together a letter of recommendations to the city commission asking for a relook at tree code. The other part of the last meeting was I provided a summary, a chart summary. I didn't put it in this agenda, but I will send it along to you, of various tree codes and permit fees in the Portland metro area, and what level of review is typically required in other cities for tree removal, and whether those cities regulate trees on private property or just regulate trees in the public right of way. So that was going to inform the letter that the NRC is working on. And, you know, I think that's going to be a tabled item for the next meeting upcoming. Sam, did you want to talk to that a little?
Sure. And good synopsis, Pete. Thanks so much for kind of digesting it all. What the letter is supposed to do is essentially highlight this conundrum where the code starts off by saying, in order to preserve our tree canopy, you know, et cetera. And then it goes into the different components of the code. And the first one talks about sidewalk uplift with, you know, it allows the removal of the tree. So it seems like there's some disconnect between how the code is written and how it, you know, successfully preserves trees or not. Particularly trees in the right of way or trees in the public ownership for the city ownership. So we're looking to strengthen it either in terms of improving the language and also improving how trees are protected in the city. So I'm so sorry I wasn't able to send the letter sooner. I sat down like 3 times over the weekend, and every time, like, I only got like 15 minutes to hack away at it. So I feel like I should pass it off because it's like as soon as I sit down to do it, something takes my attention. But what I will do is do the best I can to, I think what it is, that's just a little, I kind of got too tangential to other topics that are related, but might have gotten away from the specific issue related to sidewalks, tree sidewalk conflicts. So there's definitely more tree related work that we can do. I don't know if we should do it all in this one letter, but it's all in there. So we can talk about it next time and kind of tease apart what we want to look for in this particular letter and then save some of that content maybe for next time for future letters or future commission recommendations. So I think, so I'm totally open to future edits.
Yeah.
So sorry I didn't get it sooner.
Oh, that's okay. Well, the next item up kind of it's good that, it's early days still on the letter because the next item is the city commission's goal. And the version of the goal that I put in the NRC agenda is not the most up-to-date goal. Aquila let me know that there's an updated one because let me share my screen and I'll share that with you and talk through it. 1 second. Let me know if you can see this. It says December 2023 Commission Goals and Strategies Update. Everybody see that? Okay. So the goal is protect and preserve, goal 7, protect and preserve our environmental and natural resources for a healthy, sustainable community. Strategy 7.1, focus efforts on preserving and protecting the city's tree canopy. Target completion date, June 30th, 2025. Important or relevant dates and milestones looking ahead in the next 3 months. Friends of Trees is proposing conducting community planning events. So we have a contract with Friends of Trees. We need to renew it through 2025. They did a December planting on the 2nd. They're going to do a spring planting April 6th. They're also doing pruning workshops throughout the community. Some of those are actual workshops where they teach people to prune, which is a little more intense. And some of them are just pruning parties where trained pruners from Friends of Trees go out and select a park or a neighborhood and prune trees that have been planted. So the focus of the Friends of Trees program is continue neighborhood planting, approximately about 100 trees a year, and try to increase canopy in the right of way. We do allow the Friends of Trees to plant trees in front yards as well as the public right of ways. So that's continuing. And then so the Friends of Trees piece is there, but the other thing that the NRC was talking about last year, and we need to continue, was the tree inventory. And this is actually something where Tom Kissinger wants to get involved, and he and I had a discussion about it because he understands that an inventory is a critical component of starting an actual management program, at least for whatever section of the city trees we want to look at. Our initial inventories were focused on looking at what we had plans for the indicated ash trees in storm ponds or planted in parks or in the right of way. I haven't made hardly any progress beyond just looking at subdivision plans and other plans, but that's something where we wanted to move into actual on the ground tree inventory work. So I don't know if the scope of this right now is going to be limited to ash trees with Tom coming on board and a new city commission strategy that is looking at canopy. It might change the scope of that original inventory idea. Something for us to think about as we move into 2024, 2025. But there's certainly an opportunity to continue with the tree inventory idea. And I just need to work with you guys and with Parks to flesh that out. There's a lot of resources that Sam knows about and Oregon Department of Forestry knows about in terms of how we can marshal volunteer assistance using handheld applications that will help us to do inventories, but it does require coordination and resources from city staff. So I think our initial idea as the NRC was to start some small projects in certain parts of the city, and then if they're successful, keep moving them around. But I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. One of the things so as you see here, I'm going to zoom in, sorry. NRC identified several activities in the work plan to support a healthy tree canopy, support and promote volunteer participation for a public tree inventory for city properties, parks, street trees, school properties, and other public lands. Communicate with neighborhood associations, citizen involvement committee, and the business community. Promote a heritage tree program, Arbor Day, etc., through presentations to other groups and boards. And community development staff will continue to support the NRC in the efforts as a means to achieve this goal. That's where that's at right now, but I will provide the more recent version of this goal and strategy for you to look at. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, so this looks, I like this idea of including a tree inventory, even if it's looking at specific species, just for protection and mitigation of ash trees. There's definitely going to be a situation where ash trees are just a small component of trees in parks, given that they tend to be riparian species. They're not typically an upper landscape species, so they're going to be small in number and thus low in work demand, if that makes sense, compared to like a full-scale inventory for the entire park or park system, let alone all street trees. So, and plus so I think it would be a good pilot to give the city an idea of what how the application works and the ease of use and the integration with other city systems, and how that would then inform like a management plan for trees and for in protection and anticipation of the emerald ash borer. So I like that idea of having like baby steps to get towards a wider inventory that is more inclusive of all those tree species across the city, because ash trees are just a small fraction of our canopy. But I think it would be, if this is where the commission is comfortable, it's a good start.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm glad to share that with you. I think it could inform your letter as well. But I'll stop sharing that.
Another thing, if I might, ash trees have been used in a lot of these stormwater retention areas too, and And then also some of the areas that are designated wetlands in the city itself, you'll see a lot of ash trees. So it's not only a street tree issue.
Right. Yeah, they're pretty well established ashes in some of the storm ponds. So that has an effect. That has an impact on public works, tree inventory, and to the extent that they're in parks. But we need to figure out where they are. Tom especially was very hot on this item because he's from back east, and he said he's just seen the devastation. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And yeah, even though it's not at the scale it is in other parts of the region, it's certainly going to impact us. Okay.
I've got a question, if I may. It's not related to the street trees, but
Please.
when Metro revised the zoning within the area, and if you got enough room on your property, you can put a duplex and so forth. Apparently, we removed the requirement that you had to pay a mitigation fee if you cut down a tree in the process. And I'm wondering if that was true. Actually, it was Laura Turway who had mentioned that to me when she was planning director. And I think it's a mistake. I mean,
Well, that's still in effect, Doug, for the city.
Is it?
Yeah.
So there's still mitigation payment.
Yeah. If you can't replant all the trees that are required under the code, you can, as an option, pay the mitigation fee, but it's not waived.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, that's still in effect. And as far as Metro and the state goes, there is a lot of discussion about tree codes as far as Governor Kotek's executive order and how it affects the housing legislation, et cetera. And it's still being discussed. There's a lot of rulemaking to be done still. Planners have pushed back a little bit, not just because of local control issues, but also because of their concern about undermining Oregon land use planning program. And trees may or may not be a goal 5 item, but they are mentioned in the goal 5 goals. And so I don't think there's any push to change what we have on the books for the foreseeable future. I was actually in a webinar today for the Oregon Planning Association talking about how there's in the short session, that's been an issue where tree canopy is, it's like, how can we simultaneously pass climate change legislation and do away with tree canopy regulation? So it's definitely something that's being discussed, but I know that there's no push for Oregon City to be making those kind of changes right now. The tree code is still the way it was.
Oh, okay, good.
The last 12, 15 years. In fact, we still use that's going into the tree mitigation fund, and we use that to support the budget for Friends of Trees.
I had a quick question about monitoring for emerald ash borer. Does anyone do any of you have contacts with the horticulture program at the CCC?
I don't currently know.
Okay, I'm just wondering, it seems like the kind of thing that's potentially ripe for student research, and maybe I can send them an email. I've got a friend who's a student there, but just to see if there's any kind of surveying being done currently, so that we don't have to, we're not doing the same thing twice.
There is a good amount of EAB research being done back east. So I'm curious what kind of questions you're looking for, or what kind of questions you're thinking of. Some of the initial reports coming out of ODF and OSU are looking at how the landscape of ash trees in Oregon might compare to the ash tree landscape back east. And back east, there's a variety of ash tree species, and some of them are upland species. So you'll have a variety of hosts, and more of your landscape is affected because of those of the adaptability of those ash trees being in different types of land, of being upland or in riparian areas. In Oregon, our native ash tree is primarily riparian. So the landscape is going to look a little bit different in terms of when EAB comes in and starts decimating that population. You're going to see it in the riparian corridors and your wetlands, and then in those particularly planted areas in the cities. How that turns into mitigation and protection, well, you're probably going to be able to protect some of those ash trees in parks or in the right-of-way or in yards, but you're probably not going to be able to get to them in riparian areas. And I don't know if there's even regulations around where you can use the pesticide that's used. There's two different types. There's an injection type where you actively inject the chemical into the tissue of the cambium, and then it comes up into the tree and it goes to the bark, and it goes into the roots and the leaves and the tissues and the canopy. And then there's a broad spectrum soil drenching chemical that is less expensive. It's easier to apply, but it's a broad spectrum pesticide. So it'll affect all insects, not just emerald ash borer. So there's an impact potential to pollinators. So that's why Portland is only allowing the injection type.
Yeah, thanks so much for that additional info, Sam. I guess my question, like, as it pertained to the horticulture department, had more to do with street tree inventory, or just like a canopy inventory. But yeah, that's really helpful. I know Xerxes Society too had some really useful information. Sharon Salvaggio, who gave the presentation to us, had done an article, like a feature on EAB and some of the treatments that they were trialing. And yeah, there was some promising, it sounded like there was some promising results with the injection type, doing not just in kind of like heavily monitored sites, but sites that were basically like, heavily forested sites that didn't see a lot of humans around them generally. And they did a larger acreage study and with the target area, and then treating trees in kind of like X amount of acres radius, and then kind of moving out from there. And the injection had efficacy against some EAB populations that were not also in the target trees. So that was kind of interesting.
That's good to know that that you don't necessarily need to do every tree, that you can have kind of like a community immunity effect.
Yeah, that was exactly what it was. And like, just kind of mapping out like, kind of an aerial view, like where those overlapping areas are going to be. But it wasn't more than 5% of the trees that were injected, and it had, results beyond that 5%.
Mm-hmm.
That's good to know. Thanks for sharing. But yeah, it would be wonderful to get more involvement with the students in the horticultural program at the CCC involved in the inventory, or any other aligned group that would be interested. So that's kind of the beauty of some of this data collection is once you have the level of knowledge, you can kind of get some level of training and then be deployed. So, and we can then design the data collection to be as, detailed or minimal in scope to make it easier. I think for Portland's initial inventory, they just had like deciduous, conifer, and then and maybe they had, or even they had it just to the genus. So like maple,
Yeah.
pine,
Mhm.
and then, but now like they have, and that was with a community doing volunteers doing a lot of the work.
Mhm.
So they moved away from that now, where they have highly trained staff people, seasonal staff people doing a lot of that work.
Yeah.
But I think for initial inventory, it was very successful. And they had a really good amount of coverage in the city done that way. But they were also doing it with paper in 2016 and 2013. So now it's all completely done on the smartphone, and it's much, much faster.
Okay.
So,
Right, because they can upload. It's like real time upload the
Mhm.
data. Yeah.
So I think it would be really interesting to see where city support could get to in terms of an inventory, even if it's just looking at ashes in parks. I think they'll see that it's a good opportunity to really learn more about what's going on in the parks in terms of trees. But then I think it would be very useful for Thomas then to see what the landscape looks like and how he can use that information for his planning and management purposes. And then from there, I think once we get somebody kind of glom onto this information, I think from there we can make the case that see how useful it is for your park management. Think about how useful and helpful this would be for other components of city management and city planning. So it could be a nice little case study.
Right. Yeah, I did talk to Tom about that initially, just like very briefly, but I guess the next step, what would the next step be? Because there's the potential for us to get help and assistance from Oregon Department of Forestry, right? Or even Oregon Community Trees, potentially. I don't know.
So ODF would be the Urban and Community Forestry Assistance Program would be and Scott Altland-Hoff would be the person to talk to in
Yeah.
regards to that, and that requires city engagement.
Yeah.
But then I think it's mostly that there needs to be a level of coordination at the city where this information, the information can live with
Yeah.
ODF. Like we don't even need to host it,
Right.
if that makes sense. So
Yeah,
like
no, right.
we can just upload to their server and then it lives with them. But the city has to have an agreement to
Okay.
coordinate that.
Right.
But in terms of, and that might be the easy lift that the city might be open to.
Yeah. I see that probably is the best opportunity is to open the door and get ODF staff engaged with the city, choose which department's going to head it up, choose what we're planning to do, what level. And I haven't talked to Scott for a couple of months, but I would love to see what he can do. Maybe do a visual or a virtual presentation to the city commission. Anyway, I got a lot of ideas there. Okay. What? I'm sorry, the agenda got a little jumbled up in the numbering. So I'm seeing the way it came out on the web. There's a NRC Work Plan, and then it talks about. Then there's a bunch of attachments underneath it. So we've discussed goals and strategies of the city commission. We've discussed the tree code recommendation is tabled to the next meeting. Need for tree inventory. I was going to share with you the Tree City USA application data, but not go into a whole lot of detail because it's in your packet. And then we were going to briefly look at the work plan. And then we're on to the next item. So we just got word from Arbor Day Foundation that our Tree City USA application was approved. So that's year 12. I'm planning on giving a presentation to the City Commission on that coming up on March 20th. And that's also when we're going to be doing the Arbor Day declaration for April 6th. And we will also be talking about the neighborhood planting that's going to be going on with Friends of Trees on April 6th. The data that so what we did was we turned in the data at the end of last year, gathered data from Parks Department and from the various public works operations departments. The overall expenses for tree planting and maintenance for last year came in at just under $500,000, which works out to, a per capita expenditure of $12.71. We planted 311 trees. That's including Friends of Trees plus trees being replanted. Numbers of trees pruned was 964. A lot of those were Friends of Trees prunings, and 282 trees removed. These are probably low numbers, but it's the best data that we had. We also applied for a growth award, and the four things that we discussed for the growth award was we updated the tree ordinance for the street trees, and that specific amendment was to prioritize replanting in the planter strip and not to allow fee in lieu if there was sufficient space. So it puts more of a burden on the property owner to prove that there's no space for planting before we would default to a fee in lieu. At the same time, we changed the code not to require replanting or fee in lieu in planter strips narrower than 3 feet. So those were the two things. That was the code amendment piece of it. They took into account our Friends of Trees continuing program, the Hiroshima tree dedication ceremony, and the education and celebration associated with that was part of it. And then we also had a community tree care workshop at Chapin Park back in January 28th, 2023, where they had about 37 volunteers attended to learn pruning. So we got the growth award. That would be the third growth award we've gotten, which I'm very happy about. And so that's a summary of Tree City USA. And then on to the work plan. We do have to, so our 2023-2025 work plan, Doug, is just a listing, a numbered listing. It's not that rather complicated chart that we used to use, which had a lot of different, responsibilities and who was going to work on it and stuff like that. Now it's just a numbered list. Let me share that with you guys. So our under our bylaws, responsibility number 1, community involvement in natural resource conservation. We have number 1, support a public tree inventory with, let me zoom in. Volunteer participation, communicate regularly with our neighborhood associations, CIC, and business community to promote programs such as the Heritage Tree Program and Arbor Day. Number 3, improve awareness through the city website, brochures, QR code signage, and social media for awareness and interpretation of local, natural, and geological features, trails, stormwater facilities, watersheds, and sites. Coordinate with city efforts to enhance tourism. This would emphasize local knowledge and provide interpretive signs for people to learn about things like birding, swift migration, heritage trees, etc. We could use laminated signs that lead to the Oregon City website and give people an easy way to learn. That's number 3. Number 4, continue to strengthen and encourage participation in the Heritage Tree Program through brochures, informational signs, providing money for incentives such as technical expertise, site visits, outreach, and social media. Number 5, work with property owners to voluntarily seek heritage tree designation within the Thimble Creek concept plan area. I don't know if that one is still relevant anymore because the property owners decided to move ahead with development. However, that's not, it is still, and I don't know if the owner of the golf course is still pursuing that. Number 6, support city partnerships with HOAs, Metro and Greater Oregon City Watershed Council, Oregon City Parks Foundation, and other groups for habitat improvement projects within the UGB. And 7, support partnerships with Oregon Heritage Tree Council and Oregon Community Trees. So that's under community involvement goal. Responsible.
Could I interrupt there?
Yeah, you can interrupt.
If you go on, I go into the Thimble Creek thing. There was the NRC had presented to it what they call, I think, a string and bead
Right.
trail system going through that area. Is that still in place?
That's in the code now. The dedication associated with the linear park is something that is being worked on and is actually in effect and has been applied for the very first development to come in on the golf course. Christina Robertson Gardner is the planner working on that. Toll Brothers is the housing developer, and Kendall Reed, our parks director. They're actually in the process of writing the staff report and the conditions of approval based on that concept for dedication. So there was a lot of community comment, a lot of it from the Hamlet Beaver Creek, a lot of concern about impacts of development, etc. But the the pearl and string concept that is in the Thimble Creek. It's in the site. It's in the what part of the code is it in? It's in the subdivision code as a dedication requirement. And it's just making it simple enough to work as the project moves forward, I think, is what Christina told me the other day. It was like, how do we write the condition of approval in such a way that it can be implemented in a phased manner? for this and subsequent development that may come along. So the first
For
development.
those that might not have been on the NRC at that time, it was really a trail, but it preserved small small areas where we had trees that were already there. And so it was a trail system that presented those small areas where there were already trees.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not as familiar with that application as Christina is. We could potentially talk about it at the next meeting. So, responsibility number 2, initiate recommendations and review updates to the city's comprehensive plan codes and policies as they relate to statewide planning goals. Provide input to city commission on amendments to the city's tree protection and removal code. Number 2, support a coordinated strategy for invasive species management, IPM. Improve public outreach and information about invasive plants. Amend the city resolution regarding nuisance and native plant lists to reference regionally accepted and regularly updated plant lists from Clackamas Soil and Water District, Metro, Portland, and Willamette native plant lists. Number 5, explore feasibility of offering reduced stormwater rates in return for planting trees in the right-of-way to improve stormwater quality and reduce runoff. And 6, support the city's application to the Bee City USA program through the Xerces Society for Invertebrate Compensation, which would tie back to number 2, which is requiring a involvement in an integrated pest management program. That's part of what being a Bee City USA requires. At some level, the city has to commit to an IPM type program of management on some of their public lands, whether those be in parks or public works. So that's something that involves those departments. And there's been an ongoing conversation with Kendall Reed and John Lewis about that. So I anticipate we'll be talking more about that in 2024. Number 7 and 8, promoting public awareness to promote and preserve invertebrate habitat and awareness of the dangers of pesticide use through various means. Responsibility 3, review and comment on type 3 applications that seek to vary from the adopted standards of the Natural Resource Overlay District, the Flood Management Overlay District, and the Willamette River Greenway Overlay District. The most recent amendments that I think the NRC was party to were the geologic hazard, some of the geologic hazard code that Josh Wheeler was working on as well. I don't anticipate we're going to be making any changes to these overlay districts in 2024, but we'll see. Responsibility 4, conducting orderly meetings to result in good communications and maintaining and updating a list of NRC priorities and activities to share with Planning Commission and City Commission. So that's coming up. We need to make our annual report to the City Commission for our activities in 2023. And I'll need to work with whoever wants to give that presentation.
When is that?
I think the tentative date is March 6th.
Okay, so it's coming up.
It's coming up.
Yeah, I'm happy to work with you on that, Pete, if anyone else wants to join me.
Great. Yeah. Okay, cool. March 6th. Number 5, responsibility number 5, coordinate with Parks and Rec Advisory Committee and Planning and City Commissions on at least an annual basis results in good communication and mutually beneficial results. Number 1, under that, strengthen coordination with PRAC and park staff through regular interaction and attendance. I'm very hopeful that Tom is going to be more active in our meetings, and vice versa. Support funding initiatives and grant applications for parks and open space, and invite park staff to attend NRC meetings. So that's our 2-page list. Does anybody have any other comments on that for the time being? That'll take us through the end of 2025 and see how we do.
Pretty ambitious.
It's pretty ambitious, but yeah, we can share that with the commission on March 6th.
Thanks for the rundown on that, Pete.
Oh, you're welcome. Let's see. So if there's nothing further for discussion items, it seems like all of these items potentially go on to the next meeting.
I did have a question about the goals and strategies 7 that in the under new business discussion item NRC Work Plan and the goals and strategies. Was that just for information purposes, or is there any more movement or evolution occurring there?
This one?
Yes.
Yeah, so there is an update to this. I don't know. Yeah, so I'll need to get back to you on that.
Okay.
But the idea is that this informs what the city commission, can form consensus about and what they wish to move ahead with. In particular, public tree inventory. And I think it may evolve if you guys are successful in convincing the commission that making amendments to the tree code is a good idea between now and the end of 2025, then that would become part of this.
Okay.
So, yeah. I think it's very important that we get that letter drafted and sent up, and maybe by March 6th.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that.
We're not going to be able to meet again before March 6th is the thing. So we may need to have a separate meeting if we want to get the committee's agreement in a public meeting to send that letter forward.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, would we have time either next week or in subsequent weeks before the 6th to get comment and public scrutiny on the letter?
I was hoping that we were going to have another meeting separate additional meeting to both interview Brian and Shannon. And if we're going to be doing that, potentially we can also draft the letter. But
okay.
If it doesn't go March 6th, it would go to March 20th, which is when we do the Arbor Day proclamation and Friends of Trees stuff. But I talked to Quilla about it today, and she's like, well, there's a lot of information there, so we should try to do the NRC presentation on March 6th, and then the other stuff on March 20th. But just more of one of those issues where we're loading up a lot of agenda items for the city commission. So it would be good to separate those two things. As far as a good date for the NRC to meet, Yeah, I'm available through the end of February. Through the end of February. Any of these, but I think we got to provide at least 3 or 4 days notice. I think maybe not a full week. So if I can communicate with the applicants and get them nailed down and the mayor to agree to a date to sit in on the interviews, either next week or the week of the 26th, we may be able to squeeze it in and be a Zoom meeting.
About like next Tuesday or Wednesday, would that work?
I haven't spoken to Brian or Shannon yet. So
I think
as far as you guys go, sorry, Doug, I don't want to
I
talk.
was going to say, I think we have to pull the whole group too, though, to set a date.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah. I can poll you guys via email.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. I'll make that a priority when I get back in the office.
Great. Well, thanks for doing all that, Pete.
Yeah, sure. Where are we?
Do we want to move to election of NRC officers?
That's up to you guys. We can.
Do we want to wait, guys, or do you want to do the elections?
Maybe we should wait till we have more people.
Yeah. There's no real need for this right now. I think it would be beneficial to have the full group here with Dave at least, and then and potentially Brian as well. It's all kind of hinging on when the mayor can sit in on the interviews and how quickly she can make the appointments, because there's always a lag there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm fine with postponing it. Doug, did you have a thought?
Not about that, but I do want to make a comment before we end the meeting later.
Oh, sure.
I'd like to suggest, and that decision could be made at the next meeting, but that we have one meeting per quarter that is actually an in-person meeting.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I was thinking the same thing. Well, not quarterly, but I was just thinking about in-person meetings in general. It's up to the group if you guys want to move back to an
Well, that would be fine too.
In-person format.
Because I know I've seen Sam before, but I'm not sure about Emily. Maybe I've seen her before. I don't know.
I think we've been a couple times at like Jerry's roundtables.
Okay.
Yeah. Nice to see you.
Yeah, this current format kind of came out of the pandemic, and
Yeah.
The earlier meeting time. We might still be able to meet a little bit earlier, but that's up for debate as well. So whatever's most convenient and which results in good communications per our bylaws. I'm more than happy to do that.
Yeah, it is super convenient for me to be able to just jump on a computer.
Well, we can always do hybrid options.
We can have that.
Yeah.
We can have that.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, hybrid would be great. I think, I'll be able to probably come every so often in person, but yeah, computer's nice too.
Yeah. We have, I don't know if it was figured this out. The technology in our new community room, which is in our office over at community development, which is a meeting space. I'm not sure that it supports Willamette Falls TV and all the streaming and stuff like that. So we either have to use the old city hall chambers or the city commission chambers. And then, that's a big loud room with what I consider to be terrible acoustics. But I think it might end up being back at the old city hall down on Center Street.
Yeah, that's where the crack and CIC have been held.
That's where they're at, right? Okay.
Yeah, that's correct. The audio is, I know some people attend in person and then listen to the audio like through Bluetooth speaker because, yeah, the acoustics are a little funny in there.
Okay. Yeah, I think that, being a little smaller room, but I remember from being back there and working that system, I'm familiar with how it works. Mm-hmm.
Can I ask one more question? How many of our positions are open positions? Just one?
Brian has not reapplied yet. He said he's planning to do it. So we have, and Shannon has applied but not been interviewed. So we're at 3 right now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But we could get back up to 6 full members, and hopefully we can get the word out and get back up to 7. That'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be so nice.
I think, for the appointed, the decision-making bodies like Historic Review Board and Planning Commission, and City Commission, it's been a more formalized interview process. I think for us, we get a little more flexibility to run our interviews, which is nice. But we need to. I need to bug Jared Lyman, our communications coordinator, and stay on it until we get the applicant pool back up. I tried to recruit Jerry Herman the other day. We'll see. Okay.
Just a quick follow-up on the that statement. Sam, would it be possible to put the updated version that you have in a Google Doc? I thought I had saved it, but I couldn't find that email. Just so that we can all look at it in advance of meeting about it.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Okay, thank you. And then we can all kind of tweak it and then have a more polished version to discuss.
Yes, happy to do that. I'll try to get that done soon. Like I said, as soon as I sit down to work on it, somebody starts crying. Baby, really.
Totally understood.
Yes, I will get that online and I'll share a link to it so that we can all take a look at it and then polish it, and Pete can have it available for agenda. All right.
So
where are we at now?
we're tabling election of officers. We're on to communications. So do you guys want to lead that off if you have any news?
I have minor news in regards to the urban and community forestry conference that is hosted by Oregon Community Trees and ODF. It's going to be hosted in Eugene this year.
Oh, great.
So we have a new venue, and it's going to be a really cool place. And so we're looking forward to larger capacity. So that means more people. And the theme is on trees and housing, how we can have both.
Oh, my.
So it's going to be the hottest topic of 2024 in Oregon. And it's going to combine, expertise coming from development about how, and also from the municipal drive to increase housing, particularly in Eugene, but it's a similar story elsewhere in Oregon and across the nation. but also how it's putting pressure on tree canopy and tree preservation, as well as making space for those trees and making sure that we keep them. So it's not a zero-sum game in that instance. We can use best practices to keep both, to have both. So we're going to have experts come in and speak to both sides of this same coin, and then have it be of relevance to both planners, municipalities, arborists, tree care providers, etc. So for those that are arborists, we will have CEUs. For those who are planners, we're reaching out to the APA to get continuing education credits for those folks, so that we can kind of get more people in the seats, not just the usual crowd of arborists.
Yeah, there was some good overlap at the last OAPA conference with urban forestry sessions, and they were packed. They were wall-to-wall people.
That's good news. I'm glad. I'm glad. Sounds like there's resonance, and we'll be able to make the case to get credits for them at our conference. So pencil it in on your calendars.
When is it?
I hear that it's later in June, so it's not your typical beginning of June. It's June 27th.
June 27th. Okay.
So it's after Labor Day. Usually it's before or the week of. So we have a little bit later to try to get more students to attend. Usually they have exams at the beginning of June. So, at any rate, let's see. There's a round of IRA funding. The call for proposals is going to be posted on the ODF website in March. So the recommendation is to get your project proposals kind of fleshed out now, so that when the opening for applications is posted, you can apply. But I think it's being pushed out to April. So ODF will have like a grant writing assistance for free available. So if there's anyone that needs assistance in writing a grant, they'll have that service available from ODF for free.
Could I ask again what that funding?
It's the Inflation Reduction Act, and it's looking to. And I don't know if you're familiar with that legislation, but it created a large amount of funding, in particular to a number of climate change items as well as infrastructure items. But in Oregon, they've kind of earmarked about $56 million for urban forestry work in targeted neighborhoods that have been chronically underserved, are people of color, are low income, etc. And in order to improve climate justice initiatives. Does that make sense? I'm kind of really skimming the surface of what it is. But it's a lot of funding. And Oregon has received a large chunk of it. So there's a lot of incentive for cities, organizations, nonprofits, tribal organizations to put together projects in order to receive some of this funding and get that work done. So there's definitely relevance for Oregon City here. I don't want Oregon City to miss out, because there's definitely a lot of work that we can do to help improve our underserved communities and improve our canopy, which serves all the community, not just those that are underserved. And there's no reason we shouldn't participate. So April is probably the more realistic expectation of when the RFPs will open up, but no reason not to get some draft proposals crafted in advance.
Oh,
Okay.
And that also requires having a sam.gov account, which I imagine Oregon City already has, which is the federal government service providers for grant funding from the federal government. So I imagine Oregon City already has that.
okay.
But it's kind of a complicated process. So you want to get that squared away before you try to put in application.
I see. All right.
Are you familiar with sam.gov?
It sounds like something that John Lewis in Public Works would be familiar with.
Yeah, it's like a service agreement hub
Okay.
that the federal government uses for like all its service agreements. And but you have to have a lot of like your documents in order, and your service ID number, like everything needs to be kind of in line before you can get an account. And that's what's needed for applying
Okay.
for this IRA funding with ODF.
Gotcha.
So I will share with you the FAQ I have from ODF.
Yeah, that'd be good.
That kind of specs out all this, including the free services for grant writing and anticipation for preparing an RFP, a request for a proposal for a grant.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
All right.
That's 2 things for me. That's enough.
Great. No, appreciate that. It's really good to hear. I mentioned on my end the climate friendly and equitable communities. We applied for a grant. We got the grant. The legislation is directed at combination of things: reducing parking requirements in metro cities. And we've done a lot of this work already. We have removed a lot of the parking requirements that we have for certain types of developments. Developers can still provide parking, but the city's not going to mandate minimum amounts of parking. The city commission has, we had a work session with city commission because in order to comply with state law by the end of 2026, we either have to remove all minimums citywide or have a more of a selective program of parking adjustment. We already are preempted by state law for a big chunk of the city because we are not allowed to require parking within a half mile of a frequent transit corridor, which includes our bus line 33, which is changing. And it also includes the regional center boundary that covers our downtown and the cove and the landfill and most of that area. So it's a fairly sizable chunk of the city that's already under that requirement not to mandate parking. Outside of that, and I'll provide a better presentation about this in the future because Aquila's already provided a couple of presentations to the city commission and the planning commission, and it's pretty complicated. Pardon?
Does this apply to just residential? Street parking?
No, it actually applies to multifamily as well and mixed use to a certain extent. The other aspects of it, Doug, are in electric vehicle conduit infrastructure requirements in the building code. So if you have a certain parking lot size or 20% of those spaces have to be outfitted for electrical vehicle charging. And then, so we have some decisions to make. The city commission has some decisions to make, and they've already given direction to staff to work with DLCD on a parking program that complies with it. But some of the things we cannot preempt. They are they're mandatory. And they're very much focused towards towards housing, but they're all also focused at new commercial development. The other aspects of it are parking design, increasing the amount of tree canopy over parking lots. And they're talking about new parking lots over a half an acre in size. And then the other components of it are, if we do not decide to remove parking minimums, we have to do what they call mandating unbundling rent from parking. So if a landlord charges extra for parking spaces, they have to charge that separately. And that's a very difficult thing for the city to administer because we just don't have the administrative capability to do that. So it's a challenge. The state is basically attempting to, cities to fall into line and not require minimum parking citywide. And a lot of cities in the metro area have already done that and just decided not to require it. Mm-hmm.
I guess the question I had, does that apply to commercial parking lots?
Yes, it does. So they would say the market, cities cannot require, and we're talking about new parking lots.
I understand that.
Yeah. They're just going to the market will determine whether the parking is provided or not.
I mean, I go to a place like Costco and it fills up. I mean, how can you not require some kind of minimal parking?
Yeah, I mean, there's overflow concerns on adjacent neighborhoods. That's part of the city commission's concern as well. The state's also mandating capping parking maximums, so instituting maximums as well. And so we've got a lot of work to do. We'll get there. It's just not going to be easy, and it's very difficult in some respects because it affects suburban cities the hardest, where there's a big jobs housing imbalance. People need cars to trek across the metro area and get to their jobs and that sort of thing. So
these are state requirements, is that right?
Yeah, it's called the Climate Friendly and Equitable Communities legislation. So I'll provide an update on what that means. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, some of it already went into effect at the beginning of this year and last year. But we have to actually codify in our development code some of the remaining requirements. But DLCD has awarded us a grant, and they're going to provide some consulting assistance for this. All right. Thank you, everybody, for bearing with me. It's great to see you all again. And Doug, I'm really excited to have you back.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back.
Yeah. And we'll be doing this again in March. But in the meantime, I will get back to you guys tomorrow or Friday with hopefully a date for an alternative meeting for interviews and a discussion point on that recommendation letter.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Take care, and hopefully we don't get snow this evening. Stay
Thank
safe
you.
and healthy.
Yeah, take it easy. All right.
Okay.
Do we need official call to close, or can we? Okay, let's close it at 7:31.
7:31.
Thank you.
All right. Good evening.
Bye.
Good night. Thank you.